Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
Welcome to the back of the range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 80. As always, thrilled to have you joining us this week. If you're just now learning about the podcast, don't worry. You can catch up at your own pace, and every episode, 1 through 80, is filled with great stories from the world of amateur golf, professional golf, and collegiate golf. So before that next flight or that long drive, download a few episodes, get caught up, and I guarantee you'll enjoy the stories shared by our phenomenal guests. We have great guests lined up all summer long, but I recorded an episode today with three-time Walker Cupper and former Walker Cup captain, Jim Holtgreave. This is one of those special episodes that I highly recommend you share with anyone that is passionate about amateur golf and specifically mid-amateur golf. You see, Jim was the winner of the very first United States Mid-Amateur Championship in 1981. Think about that. Have you ever heard the story from the guy that has his name first on a USGA trophy? Well, you will very soon. Before we get to this week's guest, remember, keep posting your reviews in Apple Podcasts. Can't stress that enough. It is super important for the growth of this podcast. You know we're on social media. Go ahead and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Instagram handle is the Back of the Range Podcast. Everything's available in the show notes of this episode. And to make it simple, just go over to thebackoftherange.com. So it's that time of year where college students are going through graduation ceremonies. We've had this episode saved up for quite a while, and I thought since our guest just graduated college yesterday, let's get it out there and get it posted. Our guest this week is Alexa Hammer. She's originally from South Florida, and when it came time for Alexa to pick a college to attend, well, she did something a little different. You know, it's one thing to move away from home to get that traditional U.S. college experience of keg parties and football games, but Alexa left her home for the home of golf, that is, St. Andrews, Scotland. You see, she picked up a degree yesterday from the University of St. Andrews. She played for the university's golf team, and her home course, yeah, you guessed it, it was the old course. Alexa shared some great stories about golf in St. Andrews versus the States, the decision to go across the pond in the first place, how you need to prepare yourself for links golf, and what it's like to call St. Andrews home. So let's get to this week's episode. Alexa, welcome to the Back of the Range. Alexa, welcome to the Back of the Range. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we were able to arrange it.
It sounds like we're doing this episode face-to-face, but I know that's not true. Where are you calling from? Where are you right now in the world?
I'm currently in my flat in St. Andrews, Scotland, looking out at the Firth of Forth, part of the North Sea, and the Old Course.
Well, you've single-handedly just pissed off every single person listening to this podcast that is not in St. Andrews right now. So that did not take long. So good work.
That probably wasn't the best.
Good. Perfect.
You know, it's a gloomy day here. It's rainy and windy. It's cold. It's brutal. I miss Florida.
All right. Well, nice save. You are the third Hammer to be on this podcast. Cole Hammer, no relation. He's currently playing college golf at the University of Texas. He's a USGA champion. We had Kevin Hammer on earlier in season 1. I think you know that guy, right?
I do. Good old Pops.
Yeah. Well, we forgot to tell him that you were going to be a guest on the podcast, so he's probably listening right now thinking those two idiots did this behind my back, and that's of course what we did. So,
surprise.
So there you go. So let's talk a little bit about. I mean, it's an incredible story how you're, like you said, you're native of South Florida, and it comes time for college, and you end up playing at the University of St. Andrews. So tell me a little bit how you got into golf, and tell me just a little bit about your family relationship with the game of golf.
Well, my grandfather, Laurie Hammer, played on tour for a few years, had some success, and then was the teaching professional and head golf director at Delray Dunes for about 45 years in Delray Beach, Florida. And my dad was a great amateur player, college player. So really they are the ones that introduced me to the game. And my dad did not have a son, so I guess I was the designated golfing child.
Nice.
But luckily for him, I really enjoyed it and have played the game ever since. I could probably walk and whenever they introduced me to it. And they've taught me, not just only about the swing or course management, but really about everything the game has to offer and how special it is. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I like how you just said he was a good amateur player. I think the last time I played golf with him, he shot 64. So I think he can still get it around just a little bit here and there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people here on the podcast and asked that similar question. How did you get into the game? And whether it's a mother, father, or friends in the neighborhood or grandparents, you have golfing excellence in your family. It's not just, dad took you to the golf course. Can you remember back when maybe it became apparent to you that, okay, there's some pretty serious heritage in my family with the game of golf? Did it become apparent to you relatively quickly, or did you just not think anything of it?
To be honest, I didn't really think much of it. I think since being away from home and starting here in St. Andrews and being away from them and being separated from it, it's made me appreciate it a lot more. My grandfather and father were never really ones to talk about themselves to me. So I think through speaking with their friends who've known them for years and who made it apparent that that's not normal, nice. I'm lucky, is what made me really realize it and appreciate it and being away. So I think it took me a bit, and I definitely didn't appreciate it right away.
The thing I also wanted to ask you about is, you grew up in South Florida, and I'm a South Florida native, and, the weather in the summer is brutally hot, and, we're playing golf courses no matter what course we're really playing. The grasses are all pretty similar, a lot of Bermuda, a lot of humidity down here. You're obviously a great player playing collegiately over in St. Andrews, but how did that whole process start where it ever got into your head to go think of St. Andrews? I would imagine you had tons of options to go play anywhere you wanted to in the state of Florida, and then probably in the United States. When did this start taking shape that actually leaving home, leaving the country, and enjoying college in Scotland became an option?
Well, I think it was the summer of 2014, before my senior year of high school, and when I had to make my final decision of where I would attend college, that I was playing golf in Asheville, North Carolina, at Biltmore Forest, where we would go for a few summers. And the head pro there always hosted a group of father-sons, whether it was Scotland or Ireland. Every other year he would take them to the UK on a golfing trip. And I was, excited for my friends, my guy friends who were going. I wasn't included on the trip. Obviously it's father-son. And then last minute, one of the dads had business and had to pull out of the trip. So they asked me if I wanted to go. And they said, hey, do you want to go in 3 weeks? And my dad said, you're going, and
nice.
You're canceling all your plans. And I said, okay. So I was traveling. We arrived, and I was traveling around with, about 10 middle-aged men and then 10 boys, and I was only girl, and it was it was quite the
And how old are you? How old are you at this point?
I was about 16 or 17. I was 16 or 17. It was one of the 2 summers prior to my senior year.
So you're the only teenage girl on this trip.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
and
exactly.
teenage boys are idiots. So
yes, and I don't have brothers. I have 2 younger sisters. So it was quite the experience for me.
God.
No, but it was a great time, and we were, right after we landed 7 a.m. one morning in Edinburgh, went straight to go play Renaissance, and it was go, playing 36 a day. It was an exhausting trip, but so much fun. And then my dad decided to come out at the end of the trip because we were finishing the trip up in St. Andrews. So we stayed an extra week in St. Andrews and met a friend, Graylin Loomis, who was also from Asheville, North Carolina, the same club at Biltmore Forest. And he was still a student here at the time. So we met up with him. He showed me around the university, told me what uni life here was like. And that's when I really started thinking, oh, this is an option. I could, do what Graylin did, or I could, live here for 4 years. And I don't just need to stay in the States like most people do for their undergrad. And then that's when I started seriously considering the option and got in touch with the golf coach and applied and was accepted. And thought maybe I would do it for a year and said, why not do it for 4? I love traveling, and
Sure.
the old course would be my home course, and I'd be able to live in this little town on the east coast of Scotland. Why not? So it was really that golf trip that made it a possible reality for me.
Now, what were your now that's great on the golfing side, but applying, I would imagine there are a lot of people that had that similar idea that were entering college, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to go live in St. Andrews and play? You have the old course as their home place, but it's not like you filled out an application, they just accept you. I mean, there are obviously some of the things that go into effect. Tell me about one of the scholarships you received to get into St. Andrews.
Well, when I was speaking with the golf coach about possibly playing golf here and attending university at St. Andrews, he made me aware that they were awarding their first Arnold Palmer scholarship for academics and golf here at the university. And in the UK, it's definitely not like America and the NCAA system that offer, scholarships for every sports.
Sure.
They're very, most of the schools, at least St. Andrews, is very academic focused. So I didn't even think scholarship opportunities were possible. But once the coach, David Watt, here made me aware of the Arnold Palmer scholarship, I, applied and wrote my essay and had my interviews for the scholarship. And then I was awarded it. So it was great to be the first recipient of such a special scholarship. And I'm very grateful for it.
And you actually got to meet Mr. Palmer at Bay Hill. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. The first year they awarded it in 2015, they awarded it to one girl and one boy. So George Burns, who was on the team, who's a year older than me, was the male recipient. And we went with our coach and played Bay Hill and met Mr. Palmer. And it was a really special day.
Right there is a pretty, that's a bucket list kind of thing, getting to not only play Bay Hill, but meeting Mr. Palmer. Did he have any questions for you, or do you remember the conversation you had with him?
He was probably asking me, if I've mastered the bump and run, as most people do over here after attending my first semester of university. I don't really remember the conversation that clearly. It was really, kind of a blur. Sure.
Yeah. But, you're looking at Mr. Palmer. You're like, I see your mouth moving. I just don't hear anything coming out. So,
but it was great to meet him and spend that time with him.
All right. So you are we're going to get back to a little bit about university life in a little bit, but let me hit you up for some advice, ideas. I've been to St. Andrews. I've played there several times, but you live there. You are a resident. So for people coming over to St. Andrews, I'm sure you've seen it all. You've seen the large group from Europe. You've seen the group of guys from the States. You've seen it all. So what are some of the immediate telltale signs that someone has arrived in St. Andrews for golf and is clearly not prepared for what they have in store for them?
Well, probably just like this morning, they're kind of just standing and looking around, like not knowing where to go. Or
okay.
They don't know where the town is. Everyone knows that you can find the 18th green at least, but they're like, which way's the town? It's like just up the road, the only place you can walk to. I guess also seeing the people stand out there on the first tee that are just kind of shivering and don't have the snoot, or I guess as we call it in the States, the gaiter. That's pretty important for the cold weather. Or maybe the people who are trying to stand out there in the wind and use an umbrella.
Okay.
I don't think that they know what they're in store for, because that umbrella is quickly going to go inside out.
Yeah. That's one of the things I learned really quickly one year I was there. I'm like, this is stupid. I am not using this umbrella. I'm going to be soaked. And that's the way it is.
So that's probably a few signs, but people quickly figure it out and enjoy it. I don't think they really care if they're prepared or not. They're just so excited to be here.
Right. Well, and you were that rookie too about 4 years ago. So you probably had a lot of mistakes you made. What's the worst situation you've ever been in out on the golf course, where you get out there, obviously it's all walking. This is not, there's no golf carts where you got, you're out there and you have to just rely on what you bring with you. What's been the worst situation you've been in on the course, whether weather-wise or just not having something in your bag? I mean, can you think back to a time where you're like, I am just not prepared for this?
I've probably made every mistake. I mean, you always bring a change of clothes or something, but when you know, a lot of the courses here are 9 holes out, 9 holes back in with, so if you bring a bag of clothes to change into, if you get soaked at a tournament or something, you're not passing the clubhouse again. So you have to have everything in your bag that you can. So, I would have everything in my bag, and then quickly everything inside the bag would get just as soaked as the clothes I was wearing. Of course,
yeah.
So, plastic bags, extra towels in plastic bags, extra socks. So I probably made all of the mistakes. I'm still learning, to be honest. I still, you can't really bring enough with you out there for the bad days. And then you kind of get complacent having a few good days, and you're like, oh, I don't need to bring all this stuff. And then right when you don't bring it, that's when you need it. So
of course, yeah. And you, like we said, you grew up in South Florida, and what was the learning curve to actually get your game in shape to compete and play on your team? Because you're not hitting flop shots out of thick Bermuda rough anymore. So how quickly did it take you to kind of get your game changed?
Well, the first thing I did after playing in just average wind here was I called my dad back in Florida and said, okay, you need to order me a 4 and a 3 iron because I didn't have those in my bag at home. I had, like a couple hybrids. I was like, I need this. Maybe order me a 2 iron. Please help me. Can I go buy one? I mean, I can't play another round without this. So that was the first thing I did. You really just learn how to play in the wind. A lot of it's mental. Learn to just ignore whatever weather comes your way and kind of just become numb to the wind and the cold. At least I had to, because I was definitely not used to that, playing in weather that you wouldn't even want to go outdoors in, but then you're out there for 6 or 7 hours, warming up, playing, and waiting for your team to finish in some tournaments. Sure. So I think a lot of it was mental and just through experience, learning how to use the 8 iron around the green or putt from way off the green, even if you're 40 yards from the pin, maybe sometimes you're going to putt, maybe you're going to use an 8 iron. I was so used to just always grabbing the 60 and, landing it up there and expecting it to spin, or getting used to the ground. It's hard firm ground here. Trying to stay away from pot bunkers.
Those are
that
pain, yeah.
Took me a little bit too long to learn, admittedly. It's just a waste of a shot. It's almost like a 1-stroke penalty to just hit it out. So now when I go home and I hit it in a fairway bunker, I say, this is amazing. I still have an opportunity to advance the ball.
Exactly, yeah.
Towards the green, or maybe even hit it on the green, rather than like yesterday, second hole of the Jubilee, had to hit it out backwards out of a pot bunker.
Jubilee is one of the toughest courses there, I feel.
It's tough. We've played it a lot, so you learn some tips and tricks, but especially with the normal wind, if you're playing it south wind and you are, coming back on the back 9 playing into the wind, those last 5 or 6 holes are real tough still.
Oh yeah, absolutely. By the way, and I mean this in the nicest way, but you're a complete golf dork, because most college because most college kids that are calling home to mom and dad are saying, send money. I need money for beer. I need money for beer and for pizza and for books. And you're calling home, please send a 2 iron. So
yeah, it was a 2 iron, and it was hot chilies. That's another thing.
Oh yeah, thermals.
Yeah,
thermals.
Thermal. Yep. So that's what I asked my parents for.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what about culture shock? What about just like interacting with fellow college students in St. Andrews, as opposed to maybe, I'd assume you have just all your friends are Americans in high school, kids you've grown up with in South Florida, and then you go to St. Andrews. Like, what were some of the culture shocks there?
I don't really know. I was expecting more of a culture shock almost, because I knew that about 25% of the student population was American, which is way higher than I anticipated. But through the application process, I learned that fact.
Okay.
But, you really do feel like it's more than 25%. of Americans. And so I was expecting even more of a culture shock, but you're still surrounded by so many Americans. You hear so many American accents. It's almost like, this American takeover of this Scottish village. Everyone comes to St. Andrews, and if they're Scottish, they're like, I've never heard so many American accents in my life, because it's just dominated by so many American students. But then there's probably, 15% of the students maybe that are Scottish, and then another smaller percentage that are English, and then the rest are international. So it wasn't too much of a culture shock, more than it was exciting to hear about people's different backgrounds, or, hearing them speak all these different languages to their friends. At home, it's pretty unique for someone to speak a second language, but here it's unique to only speak one language. Most of my friends speak 2 or 3 languages.
Oh, wow.
So I guess it was just not as much of a culture shock, but more exciting to hear about people growing up wherever they were from, around Europe or Asia or wherever. And I think my first year on the team, even the golf team, there was about 12 different countries represented, and 30 of us or 35 of us. So that was pretty cool. But especially the fact we all had golf in common, even though there's people from Australia, Singapore, all over Europe, Canada, the US. So that was really neat.
Nice. Now, you mentioned the team. Your team is set up a little bit different than the typical college golf team here in the States. Here in the States, I guess the whether the team has 7, 8, 9, 10 players, it's still men's team playing 5 and 4 scorers count, and then obviously on the ladies' side, same thing. What's the setup for your team? I know it's a little bit different, right?
Yes, it's very different. So we are actually a combined men's and women's team, composed of probably 30 players, and there's not separate men's or women's stroke play events. Usually the men travel to their, tournament one week, and the women travel somewhere else, in the States to their tournament. But we all travel together because there's different divisions, obviously, for the men and women, but the stroke play event sites are the same.
Okay.
Our NCAA equivalent is called BUCS, British Universities and Collegiate Sports. So the BUCS stroke play events are, combined male and women, but with separate divisions. And you can actually enter as many players, men and women, as you would like. So you're not really competing, as a 5 and taking the 4 best scores. You kind of almost compete as an individual, but there is a smaller team aspect of it. So as an individual, with whatever I finish in, let's say I finished 3rd or something in an event, I earn 300 points for my university, for St. Andrews. So then all the players that they enter combine all of their points, and you do it that way, and you earn a certain amount of points to be able to qualify for the finals and the end of the year. But same in that stroke play event, there's a smaller team competition on the side, but there's less importance put on it, where you may enter 3 girls and then they take the 2 best scores, or you may enter 3 girls and they take the 3 best scores. It kind of varies stroke play tournament to stroke play tournament. But that's nice because it is different, and it's nice because you can enter as many players as you would like, rather than, you're competing, qualifying week to week to, for the 5 spots, the 5 travel spots to whatever events next. But then we also have a match play series in the winter and then the spring months, where those are combined men's and women's teams. So we field 3 teams. There's a first, second, and third team, each of 10 players, and those are mixed, men and women.
Okay.
So yesterday I played a match, and, we were half women, half men, playing an all-male team, the University of Newcastle. So in the match play portion, I've rarely played another girl. I think I've had 1 match and probably 30 matches I've played, and the rest have been male. So you still do get a chance to compete against the other gender, I guess.
Sure. You mentioned your view right now out of your flat, looking at the North Sea and looking at the course. I think I've seen pictures. I've seen some really great pictures, actually, of St. Andrews covered in snow. When the weather's bad, what is there to do in St. Andrews? I mean, I know the correct answer to say right now is like hit the books and study really hard, but after you've done all of that, what is there to do in St. Andrews if there's no golf?
As a student, there's a bunch of student-run events. So whether it's a fashion show, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the show Kate Middleton walked in, which is called Don't Walk. It's a charity fashion show. They have, dinners, charity dinners, polo tournaments. So there's things like that to do, but really people usually just hit the pubs, to be honest.
Now we're getting into the serious part of the episode. Okay, you're of legal drinking age, so we can go this direction, but you're the one that brought it up. So what are the pubs that maybe I know that people from the States coming over know the Dunvegan, they know the Jigger Inn that's right off of the 17th of the Old Course.
Yes.
But, we all know those. What are some of the lesser known pubs that people should make sure they go check out just for educational purposes?
Educational purposes. Yes. Well, the Dunvegan, the Dunny is still my favorite.
Really? Okay.
That's a great place. That's a great place to go. I mean, just because the whole ambiance in there, and they always, have the golf playing rather than like cricket or rugby and some other pubs, which I still don't understand.
Okay, I don't understand either. Don't worry.
So I still really like it there, and it's a great location, and you can sit outside there. Same thing with the Jigger. But the Central in town is good. Bruco is a more modern, I guess, bar or pub that is really popular among students. It's the St. Andrews Brewing Company. And then another one that is popular amongst a lot of locals that is a really like traditional pub is called Aikman's.
Okay.
So those are two good ones, but the Dunny is still my favorite.
That's your favorite. Yeah,
that's the one you got to hit.
That's my favorite too. I think I spent just about the entire week there and ate every meal, and spent a lot of time there. So
it's a good spot.
Oh yeah, it's a great spot. So you're getting ready to graduate. You're getting ready to kind of call it a career, so to speak, with college and move on to the next step. Amateur golf is very popular in the States for MidAms, for seniors, even for juniors. It seems to be that the MidAm or post-college women's game in amateur golf is kind of lacking, whether there's not a lot of participation for whatever reason. But you want to keep playing after college, don't you?
Definitely. I want to keep playing, keep improving my game, and don't really want to stop. So hopefully whatever job or career I pursue won't keep me from doing that too much.
Let's talk about other courses that you've played other than in the town of St. Andrews, things you've gotten to experience that, whether it's in a tournament through college golf or anything else. What's the furthest you've traveled since you've been there to go play in a tournament?
A lot of our tournaments are in Scotland or England. So we'll, drive down to Kent, which is quite far, a 12-hour drive, but that's pretty common. You drive everywhere in the States. So the majority of them, I'd say, are Scotland, England. The team's gone over to Ireland a couple times. I've actually gone with the team to New York and California and Florida for training or warm weather training when it's a bit cold here during winter break. But for tournaments, we've also traveled to Spain, Croatia, and the Czech Republic. So those are a bit more unusual places.
Yeah, of course.
The Czech Republic, we flew into Prague and then drove about 3.5 hours north to a place called Liberec. And we played this course, Liberec Golf Club, that had 8 par 3s.
Okay.
That was interesting. And was a part of the Czech Republic that most people don't go to, and they don't go there for a reason.
Okay.
You kind of just visit Prague, and but it was an interesting experience. It was not glamorous at all, but we had a great time. It was a memorable tournament. The Czech Golf Federation hosted the tournament, and I'm not sure how many golf tournaments they put on before, but they barely spoke English. The night before at midnight, there were no tee times. They didn't know what tees the women were going to play or what tees the men were going to play.
No problem.
So it was quite an interesting experience. I don't know if this is bad to say, but they had an opening ceremony, and, people from all over Europe came to play this tournament. So they had this opening ceremony where they had the different countries represented walk out with their flag, and it was a very serious ceremony. And the people welcomed us and gave some speeches, and it was very nice. And then they said, we're going to have this, next entertainment act. And a woman came out, barely clothed, with a pole and started doing pole dancing for about 25 minutes. And we kind of were all in shock, looking at each other like, is this really happening right now? In this big auditorium, what is going on right now? And we just were trying not to burst out loud, and we started giggling, and they're taking it very seriously. They really appreciate the art and sport of pole dancing. And it was an interesting experience. It was very impressive. She was very, talented and very strong, obviously.
Sure.
But that was very different for a golf tournament and opening ceremony of its kind. So
sure. Yeah, I don't know really. Yeah.
New.
No, you're doing great. It's kind of hard to not. I mean, it's pole dancing. So was her name Sapphire by any chance? I'm just kidding. That's terrible.
So that was new.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you're not going to forget that tournament anytime soon.
No.
Wow. That's the first. Did not expect that story to come up.
Nope.
Let's go ahead and wrap up with just a final story. I know that you occasionally will play a little bit of golf with your father in some tournaments, specifically the mixed championship for the FSGA, Florida State Golf Association. I think you've won that a handful of times. I know you don't like talking about yourself and your abilities on the course, but at least share at least one story where you had to bail out good old dad in one of these tournaments.
Well, I like bailing him out because then I can kind of hold it against him.
That's what I'm saying. I'm giving you, here's your platform. I mean, you get to kind of, give him the needle just a little bit and, tell a story of when he doesn't have his A game, and don't worry, Alexa's there to take care of you.
Okay. Well, the most recent one we played in one of the summer Florida State Golf Association mixed team tournaments, we played in Orlando. It was a few years ago now. We haven't played in one in a while. But we are coming down, the last 4 holes of the tournament. I think we were tied for the lead going into the final day. So, we were probably, 5 under with like 4 to play. So we knew we were doing well, but the tournaments are really competitive. They have a great field at all those FSGA events. And we knew we had to, come up with some more birdies to have a chance at winning. So I remember, what did we do? On 15, I think, I made a birdie, 16, he missed his birdie putt. 17, was a par 5, and, he just, hit it in the trees or something. I'm not really sure. And I was in the front, greenside bunker, line 2, hitting my 3rd on this par 5. So almost got it to the green in 2, knew that he wasn't really going to help me on the hole and had to make something happen. And he was like, the bunker was way far down. Like I had a blind shot. It was, way below the green.
Sure.
Couldn't really see much. And he said, let's see how close you can get this, And then I said, okay. And I hit it and I hold it for eagle. And then I parred the last and we ended up winning by 1. So now I say, you were, challenging me on that bunker shot. Well,
glad you were there.
Because I pulled it off and we won by 1. So I like holding those last few holes against him and reminding him, because rarely does it happen where I can help him because he's usually playing pretty well.
Yeah, so this is a time where you guys competed with each other on the same team. Does it ever get ugly between you two out there when you're playing against each other? I mean, are you
No.
Okay.
We just talk smack to each other and give each other a hard time, but no, it's fun to see him play well. And, even though sometimes it's a bit annoying because he usually plays pretty well, I still like it.
It is annoying. It really is. Yeah. Well, Alexa, I really do appreciate the time. These are great stories, and I think it's important for people to, it's information about St. Andrews. Everyone needs to go to St. Andrews at some point. So hopefully some of the things you shared will be beneficial to people listening to the podcast. And best of luck with the rest of the way in school and your additional amateur endeavors. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be one of your episodes in the Back of the Range podcast. It's my favorite.
And there you have it. Another great episode here at the Back of the Range. Special thanks and congratulations to Alexa Hammer. She just picked up her degree from the University of St. Andrews. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Check out thebackoftherange.com. And we'll see you again next week for another episode here at the Back of the Range.